Here we are. Hello, everyone. It is Tuesday, July 21st, and I'm joining you today from my office, our home office at 147 New Boston Street. And I'm just realizing there's a lamp on behind. This can be distracting. We can always be thinking about our environments. It's important. Welcome. It's good to join you today. And my collar needs to be fixed. See, it's just real, guys. It's you get what you see. We're no pretense here. We are a little later in a few minutes bring Dan Lannon in to talk to us. What's really occupying a good percentage of our mindset here at NuPath, and I'm sure many of our families that are watching this. This is the plans to move forward with reopening our day programs, one in Westford and the one here in Woburn. Of course, there's also our day hub that's also in Woburn. This is something that you've heard us talk about for many sessions now, and probably it's going on weeks that we've been, sort of flirting with the idea, and then more recently going at it with a lot of with some real specific action. You heard us share about some of the particulars last week when Dan and Ted discussed some of the specific plans. We know that we've presented our plan to DDS, to our regional director, and this is something we're trying to do in coordination with a lot of factors. I talked with a mother of one of our folks yesterday afternoon, I think it was, just to check in with her on something, and I know that the desperation is real. And she talked to me about her son, who she felt was losing, worried, losing skills, losing his willingness to participate with various, sort of activities of life. And we've heard it talked about on a national stage about in relationship to plans for kids going back to school, and trying to weigh out the damage of not doing something, even in spite of the fear of doing something, or the very real threat of COVID-19 continuing to just hover and stalk us as a population. So much of what we're trying to do, and what I'm going to attempt to do a little bit today, is to, on the one hand, validate our reasons for continued concern, to continue to proceed with an abundance of caution, which is a phrase that's used liberally now, and but also trying to balance the need to really begin to take some active steps forward, and understanding that there are risks associated with not doing something, and the people are suffering. Families are limited in their ability to return to work and some other things, and that we have to begin to move forward, because this is something that we're not going to have a kind of an answer for until there is a vaccine. So I'm going to just do our regular update on statistics and have Greg pull up the slide just to see where we are. We have had a small increase. I go to the mass.gov website just about every day. It's pretty good. Confirmed cases at 113,000 now in Massachusetts, and the number of deaths is coming in at 8433. That's an increase of just 65 since last week at this time. And of course, last week we're looking at a number of 170. I think the week before that we'd been at 198. So Massachusetts is showing a nice and steady decline. So that is that's a good statistic. Now we move on to the United States. We're now at 143,000 deaths, and that was an increase of 4,674. Slight decrease from the week before. I keep saying it. So whether that's a trend or not, we'll talk about that in a minute. And then globally, we are now at just over 610,000 people dead. 26,000 increase from the previous week, and it had been a really high number at 44,760 before. So this is something that we are, continuing to be concerned about. This new category that I've been hearing more talk about, and I'm sure many of you have as well, is if you look at a map of the United States. So this one is from July 9th of 2020. And the red color denotes the states that are trending poorly in the various statistics that the CDC is continuing to measure: number of new hospitalizations, hospital bed capacity, number of the positivity tests, so that being the number of positive tests in the population that when measured. Yellow is those states that are making progress, have really brought the number of new cases down, and Massachusetts and many of the New England states fall into that. And then green, which is just a very few number, with New York being one of them, and Maine, but they're trending better. And this is disconcerting enough to see this situation in the United States. But what I started hearing more about this past weekend is this new category that had to be added. This is what they call the bruised red. I mean, even something about the title makes me uncomfortable. And the reason this was added is because there are now, I think, something like 17 states that are falling into this category, and this is what's being defined as an uncontrolled spread. So this is worse than trending poorly. This is out and out, like runaway virus, and this is these are states where the ICU beds, the number of ventilators, the hospital capacity, the positive test rates are spiraling out of control, and where there is deep and growing concern about the populations of those states, and frankly the rest of the country, because we know that people travel freely. And I've heard any number of my colleagues and friends say, well, we're doing so much here to try to get to that yellow state and hopefully green, and what's to stop people from any other part of the United States traveling. And indeed, that is a worry, and that's a worry of many health experts. I know it is. And if you think that you've got the 17 or so states in the bruised red category, another 9 states in the trending poorly, it means that 26 or 27 states, don't know my math, are in the red or bruised red category. So that's well over half of our country that is finding themselves in that situation. So that is a grim, for sure, view of where we are, especially this far along in the pandemic. I am very grateful at this point to be living in a state where I see the majority of people wearing masks. And if we listen to Anthony Fauci and other health experts, we are told that our ability to control the spread of this pandemic is greatly increased with our willingness to wear masks. So by now, I think most people have gotten into the habit of not leaving the house or not having it very far from them. And so I'm grateful that we're in that category. This is the 6 indicators that our state government is using to monitor our reopening, monitor the various phases, and that we are finding some measure of well, we don't really have a lot of choice, because we do need to be moving forward. And so I just wanted to include that while the rest of the nation, or much of the nation, is really facing sort of a runaway train here, that we're continuing to do well, in fact very well, in Massachusetts. And that is something that I think is critical, that as we hear more, and you're going to hear us talking about some of the things we're doing to move us along towards the reopening, we're believing that, and I do believe that if we follow the guidelines, and we're all wearing masks, we're maintaining the social distance, we're all those other things that we know about, that we can continue our plans to reopen safely. And that if those 6 indicators that we just looked at, if those were to change, or if those were to flip and go from a yellow to a red, or from a green to a yellow, then we have leadership within our government, that is state government, that is going to be using them to help define or to guide how we either continue forward or we pull back. So to anyone out there that has got some still some nervousness about this, I think you're right to have some healthy concerns. I think that's what continues to promote the positive behavior in our greater population. I know for me, hearing the things that other cities, large cities, and some states are going through is enough for me to pause when I am trying to make a decision about whether or not something that is before me is worth a risk worth taking. For example, tonight we are going to be hosting our board finance committee meeting here at NuPath in the tent out back. We're pulling together a small number of people, but this will be our first in-person professional kind of meeting for 4 months or something. On August 4th, we're going to be bringing our board in for a meeting, and we're going to do that in person with social distancing out back, and hopefully the heat won't kill us. So we are taking some of these steps, and we are demonstrating that we can do this and do it safely. The other thing that I think is happening, and then I'm going to bring Dan in to hear a little bit more from him, is that this pandemic, in my opinion, has presented a whole host of other kind of social and societal, maybe those are the same thing, but considerations, how it affects each of us maybe differently, how we make decisions, our personal tolerance for risk. Before this broadcast, I was talking with a colleague, and I was sharing with him some experiences that I'd had the past 2 weekends, where in one case a family down in New Jersey was having a graduation party for their daughter, and we are, I mean, normally in any other circumstance I would have driven down there with my husband, and we would have gotten a room for a couple of nights, and even though they were very deliberate in assuring us that they were going to be able to social distance and all these things, we made the decision that we were not going to do that, because that to me felt like a risk too great. Yeah, they may know everybody, and maybe there is opportunities for distancing, but we'll still have to be using the same bathrooms, and in theory, approaching the same food table and so on, and it just didn't feel right. Now, other people may be making different sorts of choices, and so I think part of us understanding, well, maybe I'm overly, being overly severe about this, but I think that as long as we're keeping the dialogue open, this is about sort of harm reduction in some ways. There's the whole sort of school of thought on that. There's been all kinds of op-eds and articles written about that, and how we need to be thinking about these situations not as opportunities or parts of our lives that have to be ended forever, but that we are going to begin to re-engage, knowing that yes, it brings some risk, but that generally speaking, we are all in agreement that if we can manage this risk, reduce the harm, the possible harm, that this is going to be our entree. This is going to be how we begin to re-engage with so many activities of our daily lives that we've lost and that need to return to a normal rhythm. And the suffering that people are experiencing all across our NuPath community and indeed the world, they have to be taken into account. So to you families that are home and have some concerns or are feeling overwhelmed with your child remaining at home, I just want to reassert to you that we bear all that in mind, and we are approaching this from the position of doing everything we do in a thoughtful way that will bring about the greatest level of safety and harm reduction for everybody. So I'm going to ask Greg to bring Dan Lannon in. Greg, I just got a message that the network speed was slow. I'm wondering if there's a lot of people in the building watching it from their various computers in the building, but I'm not a tech guy, so I don't know. But as long as people can continue to see me and hear me, and it doesn't matter if we don't see Dan. I don't think that was a joke, but we can see you. Hi, Dan. Now he's frozen, so maybe.
Oh.
So maybe that is
he's coming through though. He's coming through, Dan. That just might be what you're seeing, but I'm seeing him okay. Oh yeah. So you're good.
Okay, well, that's a grave disappointment to me because I'd been hoping to see his face. Hi, Dan.
Hey Daniel, how are you?
That I can hear you, and if other people can. You've we have a little to talk about today, but you informed me just a short while ago that we have had a staff person test positive in one of our homes, and I wonder if you could maybe just tell us a bit more about that. I know we can't give specifics, but we've had a number of weeks where we haven't had a positive test, and been even longer since we've had anybody here at using our home office as a care center. What can you tell us about this new positive case?
Well, so I guess, to sort of put it in the context that we talked about earlier, and it really speaks to, what we talked about at other programs and stuff. So May 29th was when the last person moved out of the COVID center at New Boston Street, and that was our last positive case having a person quarantined. So they obviously, they had tested positive a few weeks prior to that, but they were in the COVID center to May 29th. And so, so we haven't had a positive case since the end of May, and
So like
haven't had
6 weeks or stuff. Some of yeah, about 6 weeks or something. Okay.
And so, I think we're doing a lot of things the right way, and we're really taking precautions, and people have not let up on the 6 feet of social distancing and wearing masks and all of those things. So I think that's great. The person, we did have a person test positive over the weekend, and that person had last worked at a shift for us over 12 days prior to that. So, of course, we notified the people working with them and the guardians of the individuals at the house, and made some arrangements for them to get tested. And so, but as we all know, is if you're practicing the recommendations of the 6 feet of social distancing and wearing a mask and using universal precaution, right? Hopefully, no one's exposure was in a time frame with this staff person that would have that anyone else will contract it. So, so that's what we're dealing with right now. I don't want to say that's the positive news. Really, the positive news is all we know right now. It's one isolated person and one isolated case, and the person had worked for us, 12 days before they tested positive. So,
But it's not, I mean, obviously that's not something we're keen to see. I mean, everybody wants to have, sort of zero cases, obviously. And I told you about my experience with a colleague who runs a very large organization here in Massachusetts. And she was talking about how they had, they have their weekly sort of updates and with their team, and that they had been for a number of weeks had one case, new case of COVID in throughout the entire organization. And her thing had been to everybody, let's get zero. And then the 4th of July weekend came. And so she was very interested to hear, the statistics a week or so after to see if that had an impact, because then that was also the weekend that we began to allow many of our families to take folks home. Of course, many layers of control and sort of protection there. But she shared with a small group of us that the next check-in, they now had, it was something like 7 or 8 cases after being one for, and yet none of them were the people living in the homes. They weren't any of their clients. They were staff. And so the question was, had the holiday weekend been a time where staff had begun to be more active, meeting with family they hadn't seen for a while, having cookouts with neighbors and so on. And so this is a part of the sort of behavioral kind of experience of just not really understanding human behavior as relates to pandemics, because we've never been through this before. But these are all the things we're thinking about. So I don't know necessarily what this has to do with this. I'm not saying this happened in this case, but it's something that we think about. How are we going to, where does the greatest risk come from? And it may not be people leaving our residential programs and going home with families. It may in fact be from our own staff that are becoming more active as we start to re-engage.
Right. Right. And I think the first, like as you said, as your colleague was saying, and what we've heard other people talk about is, the staying vigilant and knowing the people that you're going to. You mentioned the party that you were talking to and the number of people that they were going to have, and the contract tracing really does work and it really does help. And when you're able to really be smart about your environment and and not take risks, then if you do happen to come down with it, it's really important to be able to reach out to those people. And then that's our social responsibility I think we all have. And so as we go forward now, you know as we talk about opening, the opening strategy and what we're trying to do here and everything, it's that constant struggle of like, is this, look at what other states are going through. Is this timing right? Is this the right thing to do right now? And we just know from the people that we polled and the families that we reached out to in the first group, which is the ones that live at home and can bring people into to the program because there is no transportation yet. The overwhelming response we heard from them was, yes, we need to get back to a routine. There's a mental health aspect to what their sons and daughters need at this time. And so I think that's the delicate balance, and that's what we're trying to be so proactive on.
You had said before with this call, we were just talking about sort of, our personal experience. Like I asked you, well, would you go to that party or not? You brought up what I think is a good point, and that is part of, you just mentioned it, part of what we need to, part of containing this pandemic and this virus is being able to stop it. And part of being able to do that is being able to find out who might have been exposed quickly. And so that's the whole contract tracing that we've been talking about for quite some time. And so if you said that if you felt that the group was of such, was of the sort of, the people there were all people that if somebody did come down from something following that event, that you would be able to trace all those people pretty easily, let them know so they could get tested, and then they could, make sure they weren't passing it on to anybody. And I think that is probably a good thing to keep in mind. And part of the reason why when you enter our programs now, and even though we don't have, our clients back, to any degree, we still have to check in. We have to take our temperatures. We have to put on a list that we were there. And that is part of the whole ability for us to track down, okay, who do we have to notify? Who maybe has to quarantine? How can we make sure that this isn't passing along, right? I mean, that's at the kind of the forefront of what you've been, what you mean by that.
Yeah, and that's part of the education I think that we've done. All staff will do, before returning to work, and that we've done with with all the staff working now and just families, right? Because now we have individuals going home to visit their loved ones, and it's really, whether they have a social gathering that they go to or it's just a small group coming to their house, that inherently, introduces different people and different variables. So it's just knowing who those are and being able to easily contact them if needed. So we're hoping this remains isolated to just to this one residence and to this one person, but we certainly, like we did last time, we were going to treat it the same way. We will continue to update people as we go, and we'll continue to try to move forward cautiously.
There was an ADB call this morning that I was on, and then following that, there was the regional call with Kelly Lawless, and our regional director for DDS, and I was looking at some of the notes that came from that meeting afterwards, and apparently they're going to start tracking on the state level the sort of when somebody tests positive, if they had recently been home with families, their family, and there's a second one now that's escaping me, but it was two little pieces of data that they were going to be looking for, and they both spoke to this idea that we're trying to understand the spread, and we're trying to, and I'm sure the data then that's going to be collected across the state will be used in guiding additional decisions. That if for some reason we're finding this increase of positive cases, and many of them or some percentage of them relate to one particular activity, whether that's families coming in or I mean, whether it's families taking their clients home for the weekend or any other, I know the other one wasn't somebody that had begun going back to the day program. That's what it was. So if it's related to the reopening, again, it's this idea that we've got the kind of instruments we need that are giving us up-to-date, timely, and relevant information, so that if you use the metaphor of we're starting up slow, you know, in a car or something, we're not going to go up to a higher speed at need be. We're going to slow it down because we're going to be taking the cues from what the data shows us. And I think that that's important for families to know that this is a very sort of cohesive system that's evolving. I think where the kinds of things that are happening on the ground, the cases that are reported on a daily basis, not too much time will be lost before some sort of a higher level decision might be made in the way of guidance or something that might slow that down or guide it in a different way, because we want to make sure that we're not going to be exposing people to any kind of a risk that you know, is trending in a particular way. So I thought that was an interesting development too.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I think certainly when we reached out to the first round of families to see, you know, you know, would they have transportation to the program? Are they interested in coming back to the program? There certainly was a number of people who were like, well, I'd like to see, you know, I'd like to see it be successful for us for a little while, or I want to, you know, I don't want to be in this first group. I want to be in the second group. And you know, I don't blame them whatsoever for that. I think we're all sort of in that situation. You know, we did hear, I think it was just 2 programs in the state did reopen as of Monday. And we did hear that their day program numbers that they have in their CBDS attendance was very low. You know, but their employment program was very high. And so I think, you know, our numbers are going to reflect that as well. You know, I think our numbers will be, well, they are, you know, a lot of people have remained working in employment, and, you know, and as the numbers come back of the 49 people we've polled, you know, to start doing the assessment tool with to see if they're right to return. Of the 49, 40 have chosen to return. You know, there are a large portion of that group that transportation is an issue, and there is no answer for transportation yet. And so, and you know, and it's tough because we're asked to you know, to move ahead, you know, cautiously and to make all these arrangements a lot of times without necessarily knowing exactly what the landscape is going to look like. What is transportation going to look like? Are we going to be able to get all the people to the programs? You know, what is our funding structure going to be? You know, all of those things. But I think, you know, we're responding to, as you and I talked, maybe not to how we're personally feeling right now, but to what our you know, our stakeholders need, what our stakeholders want, and so we'll try to do that. And if we think we can try to do it safely, then that's what, you know, will guide our decisions.
You know, you mentioned the call this morning, and hearing from, I think it might be 3 agencies that actually opened it, but the Dan Burke, the one that was sharing, he talked about how the day to see people back and to have the clients back in the programs, that he described it as being almost like Christmas Day. The staff were so grateful to be reunited. People were so excited to be back that there was it felt like a real kind of a wonderful, you know, sort of experience as people started to come into the program, and it's been so long since we've seen them. And I found it very heartwarming, and because I know that's exactly what it's going to be like when we start to see some of our friends that we haven't seen for so long. And that I can't tell you the number of staff I talk to, and that almost all say, you know, oh, we just miss people so much. We want to see them. I've overheard some of the wellness calls that they've been making, and I think that, you know, I think the statement was even made this morning that this is, you know, so many of us got into this field because of our love for this vulnerable population, and they've become our, you know, been parts of our lives for decades, and they're our friends, and we miss them, and so I just thought that was something to it made me look forward to, you know, in spite of all of the mask wearing and all of the, you know, social distancing and everything, it is going to be a joyful day when we start to see, you know, people return and start to, you know, be reunited, because it's been a long time.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny that he referenced that with the staff, Dan, because then on another call also they talked about just the overwhelming excitement and joy from the individuals that did return, you know, and I think that's, you know, that's that mental health aspect, and that's that, that, those are the steps that we need to start taking so that we can, get them back to some sense of normalcy, assist with the whole, mental health understanding of this whole crisis. And then, we did lose some people that attended our day programs, and some of their friends won't be there, and have those discussions and give them the time to mourn those losses, and all of the things I think that in everyday life that we're all trying to get back to some normalcy, And I know, I relate this conversation quite a bit to, or all the statistics that you're hearing in conversation going on is that, there are two different opinions, and it's just people coming together to try to make what is the safest, decision for the individuals, just like I think they're trying to do, with the return to schools, and what's the right thing for that. And,
Right.
the nursing home where your mom is, in the, like those things. I think everyone's just trying to make the best decision, for those interested
In her call this morning, Kelly, I think, talked about a little bit more about using, she was talking about the number of cases, the number of deaths, but kind of referring to the data in a way that was a bit new, maybe but this idea that I've been sort of trying to press upon people, and that is, that we're analyzing this data for a reason. This is because we're using it to make, regular decisions as we move forward, about whether to continue this phase, back from this phase. And so that is, I think that represents, a kind of a cohesive message among, DDS, but that in conjunction with what's happening with the EOHHS and with our, even, with our governor, Lieutenant Governor Mary Lou Sudders, who has been overseeing the Massachusetts task force. And I think that can give people a sense of, solid assurance that, there's nothing, that's foolproof or perfect, as far as predicting zero, risk. But as we do begin to engage in more regular kinds of things in our lives, it's helpful to remember that this isn't based on anything other than science, and really trying to make use of the data in a way that informs us and helps guide us forward. So we can wrap up a little early. I'm just going to keep you on to the end unless you got to go someplace. But I was going to just remind people that our Unity Forum is coming up this Thursday. You've heard her name a couple of times in this forum, and probably your town hall, and probably in the last few weeks, maybe more than you have before. But Kelly Lawless, who is the regional director for DDS, and she oversees all of the area offices that are pretty much on the North Shore, maybe east of Route 2 and down to about Medford or so, that Cape Ann and the whole area that runs up through it, Haverhill and Merrimack Valley area. She's going to be joining us on Thursday. Fingers crossed, unless something else comes up. And we're going to have a conversation with her about, from her perspective, what she sees happening within our region, in the programs that surround us. We presented, I should say you, and Ted, presented our reopening plan to her. I think it was just last week, or maybe at the end of the previous week, and get her to, kind of weigh in and on her opinion of how we're doing, as one of the providers in her region, and to see if we might be able to just get a little bit more insight onto what she sees, down the road, or from the perspective of our state budget, and how are we going to pay for all the additional work, reduced revenue. And so these are questions she may not have the answer. And this is, she's a friend of ours, and she and DDS have been highly supportive, throughout the past, since March, and well, always, but around this pandemic. And so I thought it would be great to talk to her, and also John Rossi, our legal counsel, connected. Many people know him. He used to sit on our board. Is going to be joining us to talk about some of the things he's seeing, kind of on the national stage, and as he in his work, sitting on. I think he's a professional webinar taker. He's staying abreast of all the changing regulation, and how things like our the forgiveness on our payroll protection loan, and so many of those other sort of legal things that we're doing, and thought we might pick his brain. So it's going to be an interesting Unity Forum, and I'll have to get with you and make sure I have the right questions to ask Kelly when we can get her on next week, which is something a little different.
Yeah, I gotta if I could, Kelly's been great. I think Region 3, just from what we've heard, from other regions, and we do have some houses in other regions and deal with other regions a little bit. And I just think the flow of information coming out of, Kelly's office and with her leadership has been so helpful, because in the past we have gone through situations to where we've heard conflicting stories. People were sort of marching by by their own rules type of deal. And I think that has helped. Nothing's been ideal, nothing's been perfect, right? But certainly she made pop-up testing very, very available and very easy to access for us and for the group homes, and very responsive to timelines, and so for all of those things we're thankful for. And it's not easy. As we talked, the transportation's not set yet, but as you said, we submitted our plan. We'll work with her in the region to go through all the steps that we need to do. But everyone has just, the abundance of caution, the term you said is thrown around a lot these days, first and foremost.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've had just extraordinary partnership, and also, and I can speak to this last because I'm not in those circles as much, but within our legislature, state reps and senators that are supportive of the additional funding that we've needed, and supported our case, and understand that just how critical funding is to our sector and to the people that depend upon it, because this is something that it's still a very uncertain is about as good a word as any to talk about what the future related to the funding. We learned today that we're going to be, as the state moves into this next fiscal year, which began on July 1st, and us still not having a solid forecast on what the budget's going to look like, but hearing that we're going to be moving in at what they call the level funding. So what we had at this time last year, we'll have again, and that may not, continue, and there may be other sort of complications about how we can access that funding. But at least that we kind of agreed earlier today when we talked that it was a step in the right direction, and we're closer to feeling some stability than we were before. But the state has been very supportive, and we've experienced. The last thing I think I was going to mention, we'll see if Greg has any questions for us, but is about, well, maybe two more quick things. Your people did, a couple of your guys did some videos to show what the orientation would look like to the programs. And this is something that we had witnessed first. It was live, but it was at one of our business meetings a couple of weeks ago. And I think we were all kind of really, kind of blown away, but it was really insightful to just see somebody kind of walking us through the space virtually, to kind of see, this is what you're going to see first, this is where you're going to go next. And so I believe these have been done with our families and, the men and women that we serve at home in their various locations, so that in preparation for this, if people are going back into the first wave or first cluster, that they can watch these videos as many times as they like. They'll be posted to our website and also on our YouTube channel. They're just putting the finishing touches on those. So that's something that we're a resource that we're gonna be able to offer. Have you seen them, Dan, or
yeah. No, I have not. I have not seen them. I heard they came out good.
Yeah,
and I know.
So.
Yeah, and I know that they were doing some final edits to it, and so, yeah. I mean, I think everyone receives information in different ways and different, and the visual is huge, for our population and for families to be able to start to talk about the return to programs and what's different,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention, just as a blanket thank you to so many families that have been an encouragement and support, and I don't have it in front of me, but maybe I'll talk about it next week. But one family in particular reached out to us and asked whether or not that they could help pay for some of the additional equipment that we've had to purchase, those backpacks, the sanitizers, and so forth. And we know that we are continuing to see our walk fund increase. And I think and I'm just drawing on this from what Brett said, so I didn't check today, but like approaching 90,000 or right around there. In past years, a couple of years ago, that would have been an all-time fundraising record. And yet this has happened with us, having, a very brief start into our fundraising campaign, and toward the end of February and March, we ratcheted up for what should have been our mid-April event. And then of course having to, cancel that. or postpone it, indefinitely. We didn't know at the time how long these were going to be, but the generosity of our stakeholder community is something that is just so humbling, and that I just can hardly know what to say, that in these times of anxiety and all the families are facing, that we talked about the Meachams last week and their very generous donation to NuPath, and it cannot be understated just how much we value and appreciate the love that we're feeling, because this is tough on many levels, and of course financially that is one of the most important drivers of so much of this, even as we try to make decisions and move forward, not knowing what the future is going to look like from a funding perspective. So to those families out there that have extended themselves, have made some gesture, however small or large, it is so meaningful to us, and trust me, it could not come at a better time than to see some of that. So we appreciate all that. Dan, do you have anything to offer or add?
No, I would just agree with you with with your last comments. I mean, I've heard from so many families, the ones that have pitched in financially and helped out, but also just other messages of support and just being so grateful and so thankful and willingness to help. And people have sent videos and certain links to read, and I haven't got to all of them, but I will. And I appreciate, people realize that staff are doing the best they can. They're doing everything they can to provide the best care during what is not a perfect time at all. And so we're also thankful, and I appreciate them taking the time to recognize that, so that we can pass that on to staff. That's great.
And Dan, your staff, I think that we try to get at people through our Unity forums and talk about just the contributions so many people are making in so many different ways. Yesterday, I was coming in, and it was toward the end of the day, and I happened to run into Heather Gramstoff, and she was leaving, and we just had a brief conversation at a distance. She was actually in her car, and I was sitting outside, and she was just saying about how much data entry she's been doing at home to kind of get to document and to get the data we need for all the virtual sessions that people are doing, and the documentation that she's collected. She said she had to pick up some more binders because she had these binders all over her living room of this data that as we are billing for some of this virtual stuff that we can get reimbursed for, knowing that we have to have our all our I's dotted, T's crossed, because there was an audit and they came back and said they wanted to know, like, you build on this many virtual experiences, where's the data to show it? That there's a whole layer of kind of administrative kinds of machinations behind the scenes that I think the average person, just including myself, I didn't, I know it happens, but coming face to face with one of the keepers of the truths of the data, it left me thinking that we're so lucky to have the kinds of leadership and coordination and participation and just experience and skilled response that we've enjoyed during this time of crisis. Because I'll tell you, our staff just it just not missed a beat, and especially your team that is just there so many of them, just their entire work experience and daily lives have been completely upended by what they used to do and now what they're being asked to do, and it's just something that reminds us how lucky we are as an organization to have the quality of the staff with the longevity of so many working for us. So again, thank you to all of our amazing staff, and it gives me a lot of reassurance to know that stuff is actually happening behind the scenes. So hats off to you and continued leadership of your team. So really making a difference.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, the finance department, Cheryl and Tinier and the work that they're doing, because everything that Heather is collecting all has to be, split up between different billable funding streams, and really all of the work that they've been able to pull together and do and work as a team. Just and then it goes with nursing, it goes with everyone. Everyone's just done everything that they can do to try to put us in the best place to be able to provide.
100% agree. We've been talking about the finance team and the business office. We're hosting a finance committee meeting outside the tent tonight. That shows, those finance people, that's probably trouble saying that, but you know, that's probably not something that would be normally what they want to do, and yet people are coming in this heat and are willing to sit to enjoy the experience of being in there. But yeah, to give praise to one group to certainly does not diminish. I'm glad you mentioned that. We're so fortunate to have people working in every area of this organization that making this work. Greg, do you have any questions that you wanted us that we thought we should try to tackle before we wrap up at 45 minutes in?
No, I think the only questions were regarding, you know, target dates for reopening. So other than that, I think we're good.
Dan, do you want to go there, or is that?
Sure. I mean, our target date, you know, we've submitted our plan, our proposal to DDS and a plan, and they will go over each plan individually and sort of, you know, make recommendations or guidance if needed. And then after that, we need to just confirm a target date with them. And so our target date on that plan was for August 4th, which is, I believe, the Monday, or August 3rd, that Monday. And, you know, what we would look at is what we talked about before, you know, opening New Boston Street first. So at this point, New Boston Street has the largest number of people that live at home whose families can give them transport. Of the 50 people that I mentioned that we've connected with, we do have, you know, 40 who said yeah, but of those 40 that have said yeah, I think the number was 16 of them need transportation to the program. They can't, their families are unable to provide transportation. So, you know, so August 4th looks like our target date. It will be for those who can get to the program, and then from there we will try to quickly adjust to serve those other 16 and then continue to grow at that time. Families, the group today, I think it was today, is starting to reach out to our residential home parents and guardians to assess their desire to return, and so, you know, we'll just continue to reach out and do what DDS has asked us to do, the assessment tool, and to just make sure people feel comfortable. And you know, no one has to if they're not ready, and you know, we will be here when they're ready, and have those conversations when they're ready. So.
All right, that concludes another town hall. Thank you very much, those of you for attending. We appreciate it. We'll see you for our Unity Forum on Thursday. It's going to be great. And please remember, you know, as you re-engage with live, wear your masks, wash your hands, social distance, sanitize, all that stuff. We can keep yellow or make it green in our state. I believe we can do that. All right, guys, we got this. Let's do it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Bye-bye.